what's the size of the problem we're talking about? Are we talking about, a few tens of thousands of people, or are we talking about millions? Essentially, these are the last global estimates from 2012, 20.9 million people in forced labour. The majority then, 90%, is forced labour happening at the hands of private individuals, companies and supply chains in the informal economy. That it's a global problem, that no region is spared. It happens in rich countries, poor countries, emerging economies. We know what the definition is. It's work or service exacted under the menace of a penalty for which the person has not offered themselves voluntarily. We do need numbers now, and we need our numbers we need numbers both to understand the problem, or both as part of understanding the problem, as part of as key to targeting our resources, like where resources should be directed, but also in evaluating how effective are the responses in terms of policies, programs, whatever.
So what I want to do is really critique the methodology of the Global Slavery Index. But the problem here are not technical, right? They're fundamentally about the objectives. Very differently than the ILO estimate. It's not just higher, it's a very different estimate. It's used to rank countries. I don't think it's legitimate to do so based on the extrapolations that they use. And this ranking of national governments was a decision that shaped the methodology. This suggests that it's national governments that not only should respond to the problem, but national governments that created the problem effectively. So the wider context which has been bubbling around is these categories. So it's about, to what extent does the naming of these categories serve as a tool for us, and to what extent does it serve as an obstacle? And what I'm worried about is that more and more it's starting to serve as an obstacle. No matter how precise our indicators, the way that these categories are applied and what's done about it is always a question of power. So why are national governments being held responsible first and foremost? In part because it's being framed as a criminal justice issue. But unfreedom is always more than individual. It is always also structural. And the framing of the issue as primarily a criminal justice problem is obscuring that. Low wages are not naturally occurring phenomena. They're political and historical phenomena. And the same can be said for the structures of global supply chains. So the World Trade Organization, for example, seems to get off scot-free. It's only national governments that are ranked. So these numbers are based on a lot of methodological assumptions, but the GSI is having real impact. They themselves tout the fact that it's being used widely. They're the kinds of seemingly hard numbers that the media, politicians, governments, and advocates love. I do think there are ways forward. That's the subject of another more optimistic talk. I think that we should use the inclusion of forced labor, trafficking, and slavery in the Sustainable Development Goals to advance an agenda that helps build the kind of power we need. But I worry that we'll instead reinforce the politics of rescue that is threatening to dominate work around these issues.
There's a belief in a large part of the modern world that the only things that matter are the quantifiable ones. How do you quantify the level of contempt that one person can have for another human being that allows them to calmly contemplate working them to death? Non-quantifiable questions about non-rational issues are at the heart of the practice of slavery. Anyone who's done any reading of social sciences will be aware of the sort of profound insight that quantitative methods can provide, but it needs particularly skilled and focused researchers gifted with exceptional acuity in the framing of questions. Increased qualitative research is more vitally required for the understanding of the root causes of slavery. The ending of slavery has always been and remains a political challenge. The technocratic approach to slavery, which is dominating some parts of the philanthropic discourse at the moment, seems to me to be, at the moment, leading to fixation upon a search for a menu of technical options, including how to count people, which only require money to be plugged in order to achieve change. The struggle that the Helots, the Dalits, the migrants and the outcasts continues. And unless we properly understand that, irrespective of what we try to do or how we try to do it, we are fated to become part of that most accursed community in human history, the well-meaning.
So I'm really sort of coming from the coalface of the demand for numbers, not just for prevalence numbers, but for quantitative impact numbers. I'm a mixed methods person, and we've adopted a mixed methods design. I don't think that there is a major problem with trying to count. I'm not against it at all. So I think, you know, we're all aware of this pressure to quantify, but I think there is a real need to sort of manage expectation. The terms of the debate are sort of increasingly being crystallised without major input from these more nuanced accounts. You know, and we've talked as well about sort of the need for at the level of analysis to integrate macro, meso, micro levels, and that's not an easy thing to do. At the moment, I think what we're seeing is that debates around modern slavery and trafficking have really come to converge around the idea that exploitation is the defining feature. But I think understanding the relation between the particular and the general is something that is like really needed now for moving forward.